We're live.
Oh, we're live. So, welcome to the Roots and Branches episodes, and with Chris and Greg and Chris, where we talk about stuff, and hopefully, it is stuff that you find entertaining.
But first, did you share audio?
I don't think I did.
I know that it's weird. You just gotta click that little button.
Oh man. See, clunky. Hold on. You know what? We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this right. Chrome tab, share. It's so small. Anyway.
There it is.
Yeah, look, I get crazy when the mic round. No sense of getting hyped now.
Beautiful. Technology.
Oh, I feel like there was so much work went into 13 seconds. It's like that's a sprinkle. You know, you can't lead with the sprinkle. When you work for the sprinkles, it is not the same. But anyway, I like the intro, and hopefully you do too. So, Chris, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good. Doing okay. It's a Monday. There's a lot going on in the world. And we are testing out the streaming service. So usually, see if this way, that little button, we probably won't have that going forward, but Greg and I are looking at using this to be able to do some live recordings instead of what we've been doing, which is recording it and then uploading it later. So if you happen to be live and you want to say something, according to YouTube, there's one person watching, just being on our, so hello, one person.
Hola, one person. Welcome to the Roots and Branches show.
Look at that banner.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
So slick. Greg, how are you doing?
You know what? I'm doing. So I'm 50% through finals week, and it's really good. There's been so much good in the classes, but it's so much happening in the world, and then with the school, and then with the baby, and then with the house hunt, and all. There's a lot of things in the world right now. So, just taking it one day at a time, finding the rhythms and the balances along the way.
We were talking about all that's going on, and one of the things that happened this last week was the passing of Chadwick Boseman. How do you say his last name?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
I mean, I think that's right. That's how I say it.
And before we get into that, so it's a teaser. We're going to talk about the significance of his art in the world. And today's episode is brought to you by
Freedom Story, brought to you by Freedom Story.
Freedom Story. We share an office with the Freedom Story. They are an NGO based mostly in Thailand that works to prevent human trafficking, child trafficking in specific. So this is the banner right there at our office. But yeah, Greg, you're a huge comic book Marvel DC fan. You know the backstories. I remember when we saw Black Panther with Oak Life, we saw it with like a crew. As soon as the credits roll and it's all done, you were like putting all the dots together for us. Like, oh yeah, and that was this person, and they're from a different universe, but they're here for this. What was it for you like hearing about Chadwick's passing?
It was a shot. It was a shot in the gut, and it was a shot in the gut for a couple reasons. I think one, you didn't see it coming. Ironically, there's this guy who is on Instagram, and he roasts people. Like, that's his thing. He just roasts them. So he roasted Chadwick, and it was a picture of Chadwick, and he was really, really, really like frail and skinny, and whatever the case is. I looked for it the next day, and it was down. And this was like a month or so ago. Now I know why there was a photo of him so out of it, because he'd been struggling with cancer for the past 4 years and fighting it. And there's like so many different layers of significance around that. But when I noticed it, the first thing I thought was, of all the heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to die, it had to be the black guy. And I don't mean that in a comical sense. I meant that in a very serious, like there's this struggle against Black bodies, Black people. And not that I'm hoping or wishing that somebody else would have died, but I mean, just the irony around this positive character that had impacted and touched so many different lives, to be a person of color, to be a Black person, for him to be the one that dies. I'm just like, whoa. It's just, I was chewing on that for a while when that first happened. But yeah, seeing all of the people's responses and reactions to it. I posted a couple of images on Instagram. There was one particular image that like really hit me in the feels. It was a young kid. He wasn't Black representing. Not sure what ethnicity he was, but doesn't really matter. The point was he aligned all of his Avengers around in a circle, and he had Black Panther laying down, and he threw up the Wakanda Forever. And it's like, tales of heroic venture, be it fictional or otherwise, they inspire. And the impact that heroes that Marvel Universe has, specifically Chadwick as a Black Panther, is just so real. And that's not even talking about all of the stuff that he did behind the scenes and off camera and stuff like that. But anyway, that was kind of my long answer. How did you, interpret, internalize, and see this thing?
Well, I think it means less to me because, I mean, it made me sad, and especially because he passed away at a young age, and that it was this behind the scenes thing. Like, most people had no idea this, like, essentially a superstar was battling cancer, which, on a side note, gets into this whole thing. Like, you just never know what people are going through. And so we should be kind to one another and have grace, because everyone's going through stuff. Seen and unseen. But I think, for me growing up, like, all the other Marvel Universe characters talk more like me, look more like me, like, and so I think the symbolic, the deeper meaning I understand up here of the significance of Black Panther and the Black Panther. But I think it'll just naturally hit me less. So so seeing my Black friends, like, or just anybody who found this emotional connection with Black Panther, like, seeing them acknowledge it, and it's not just like, in this moment, it's not just like the tragic passing of this actor who played this character that had such an important moment in culture, as far as representation and all that, but it's also that it's kind of like on the heels of all that's going on in our country, like the racial tension, the killing of like some Black men at the hands of police, some women too, and that underlying grief and anger and sadness of racism, historic and current, and then for this figure to pass away. I see it, but at the same time, it wouldn't be. I don't think I viscerally get it, like, deep down. Like, I understand it, but it's just different. Yeah. And he seemed like a great human too. Like, that's the other thing. Like, if it was an actor who's kind of traditionally like Hollywood rock, party and rock and roll or whatever, I don't know. Any death is tragic, but when it's somebody who just seems to have offered the world some beauty, like was a gift here, it's just tragic. Yeah,
it is. I appreciate you, acknowledging, the perspective that you bring to the situation, and I think highlighting your awareness of how it impacts others is very important, because it's a both and. It's like when you can't necessarily participate in the emotional like impact, but you recognize the people, or you completely can participate in that emotional response of seeing such a figure pass away. You also have to acknowledge how that figure has impacted others. Again, like the kid who had his toys wasn't a Black kid, but the kid still had that connection, and seeing like how powerful this one particular figure impacted so many. It just, man, it's huge. Which kind of leads me to this idea of not to take away from the time of mourning, not to take away from the hurt and the pain that comes with this situation, because there's a couple people in my circle that they were rocked by this. Like, oh my gosh, when Black Panther came out, I see it a few times in the theater. Yo, Black people showed up and turned out for this event. I mean, I hadn't seen so much like Black love and joy and pride to see this American movie, not just like, it wasn't a Black exploitation movie. It wasn't like a bunch of Black people that got together, you know, they got written off this minimal budget and then put a film together. It's like, no, this is American Hollywood with this, you know, excellent cast, and it was such a good thing, right? So to see all of that and to see a character that represent that die, like, it's hard to not associate it with, okay, what does that mean for our community? However, on like a flip side, I have this term, this thoughtful advocate term, right? Where's the silver lining in this? And this is where I want to hear your thoughts. When I am not comparing these these characters, right? But just throwing it out there. When a person dies, they become immortalized in that moment, right? Bruce Lee has a quote. He says, if you want to be immortal, the first step is to live a life worth remembering. He's a character who died at a young age, and because of his death, it amplified his impact on the world. You have a character like Jesus. Jesus, for obvious reasons, it's death. Way more than any other character I'm comparing him to, right? But there's this idea of an individual living a life worth remembering, dying, and then their life and what it means, like being amplified and impacted in such a way. You see Chadwick's death, and now we learn about all of the work that he did, the hustle that he did, the caring for others and loving and struggling for 4 years, making movies, and his coworkers didn't even know. Talk about going through, like, we're in this conversation of wilderness. Talk about going through struggle, but like focusing on the positive, like focusing on being patient in the moment, focusing on the things that are noteworthy and admirable, instead of, you know, being bogged down by the reality of struggle, right? So it's like, what a hero off screen, right? And because of this death, I feel like there's a potential impact and inspiration that people can take from this. But yeah, man, what are your thoughts around the idea of death and how it relates to a person's character and things they've done and stuff like that?
Yeah, I see the thread in all those stories, and it's not to glamorize death. It's that when a human who has such an impact in the world is removed tragically, or before what feels like should be fair as far as their time, that leaves a void. And I think that void is parallel to, or reflects, the level of impact they had in the world, positive or negative, really. And so for sure, I think that death is what they say. Death is like the great teacher. Like, it's a thing that reveals what life's about more than anything else. Like, you know, you can't take your money into the afterlife. Doesn't matter like how successful you were in this area or that area, like all that's over. And so what's left is the stories and the relationships and the people that you loved or were loved by and made an impact on, or inspired or empowered. So yeah, for sure. I see the thread. And it is a silver lining. And it's, again, not to glamorize or to say like, so we should all die. I don't even think that would be, that's a different thing altogether.
Of course.
But yeah, I see it. Yeah. And lots of figures, you know, and whenever somebody passes away, you reflect on their life and their impact and all that. But I think this one just hit at this moment where there's so much going on, where Black Panther coming out was still kind of a fresh thing, and it was a moment of beauty, I think, and joy within a community. And I'm speaking as an outsider, as an observer, but it's a moment of beauty and joy. And so much of the conversation around like racial equality or injustice is like about the negative, right? Like, we need to unearth this stuff and reveal it. And there's so much positive too. And Black Panther kind of felt like that moment, like, or one of those moments. Like, it was not just a great film, but like all of it, like the humor, like even sarcastically talking about colonialism. Like, I have a friend who does ministry in Austin, in East Austin, a neighborhood that's like rapidly gentrified, and for he and his wife to like not get really angry about like every new like white hipster thing that gets popped up in their neighborhood, they just like jokingly like look at each other and say like colonizer, like, and that came from Black Panther, right? So there, I don't know, it hit culture in the moment, and so yes to all that. What are they going to do now? Are there more Black Panther movies coming out? Like,
yeah. They had a Black Panther 2 coming out, and I have a theory behind that. But before I get to the theory, I just want to highlight one thing that I saw. It like, for the record, there's nothing wrong with crying. I think crying is a beautiful thing. I'm just not a crier. However, I don't know what happened. I was listening to there was a video clip where Chadwick was like behind this screen with like a poster and like these individuals. Did you see this? You see the same thing?
Yeah. Finish the story though.
Yeah. So anyway, they were like talking about what the movie meant to them, and then Chadwick comes out from behind the thing, and it's so powerful, right? But there was this one woman who was saying how much she appreciated the movie, and she was like, "No disrespect to you, Chadwick, it was beautiful, but the fact that these women were strong, not because they had to overcome adversity, not because they were emotional, not because of anything other than the fact that they were strong women for the sake of being strong women." And I don't know what happened. Maybe it's because I have a daughter. I don't know what happened, but I was just like, that's so real. And it was so good. That movie was so freaking good. And I say that leading into, well, what are they going to do? From a movie standpoint, comic-wise, his sister, she takes the mantle of Black Panther in the comics. So it is like, it's an easy, like, it's teed up that they write it into the storyline that T'Challa, because there's no way they're going to try and replace Chadwick as Black Panther. They already killed off Killmonger. So it's like, all right, well, in the comic book, she takes the mantle. It only makes sense to do that, which does two things. It continues this theme of strong women. And then it also continues the Black Panther legacy storyline in a way that also honors Chadwick. So, I mean, that's what my guess is that they would do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Do they have the number 2? Were they filming it or anything? Was it in production?
You know? I don't know. I don't know. To be honest with you, I think it was in production. So they might have already filmed it. So if they were to continue the storyline after this, then it'd be interesting to find out. Because again, just another correlation. Bruce Lee died while filming, right after filming Enter the Dragon. Like right after filming it, he died before the movie came out. Interesting.
We definitely have to call this episode Bruce Lee, Chadwick Boseman, and Jesus.
People of color who left this earth too soon, but left behind a legacy.
Yeah.
Again, not comparing the three, just observing
a little bit, comparing them a little bit.
I mean, Jesus, there's a little Jesus in all of us, so
There you
why
go.
not, right? Why not?
I like it. Is it your favorite Marvel movie?
For different reasons, man. It's hard to compare it. I don't know, man. I would say my favorite Marvel movie would be Endgame, because Endgame was the pinnacle of 10 years worth of built up creativity, and the scene, because Black Panther was the first one to come out. If you remember when Captain America was by himself, and he was ready to fight, and then like you see this circle open up, and then T'Challa comes out. Mm-hmm. That moment, man, was good. So that would have to be my favorite. So Endgame would be number 1. Number 2 would be Infinity War, because that was the precursor to Endgame. And then of the individual characters, it would be a toss up between. I would say Black Panther would be the first one, because of it had more noteworthy elements, whereas the second Captain America had the best fighting, the best hand-to-hand combat hands down, pun intended, was in Captain America 2, and then Spider-Man Far From Home. Oh man, that was really good because I'm just a big Spider-Man fan. So I'd probably go Black Panther, Captain America 2, Far From Home as far as the individual storylines, but then Endgame and Infinity War would obviously be at the top. So
Endgame, that's the last one, right? Like
Endgame was the last one.
Yeah. I would agree. That was my favorite. But this is funny because now that I asked that to you, I'm like, I think Thor Ragnarok was my favorite. That was the last Thor movie, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that say about me? I'm Norwegian. I have like Nordic ancestry.
It's interesting, man, because like I look at there's something about that representation. There's something about I see me in you, so I like you. That's a real thing, man. I don't know if that's like just borderline, we're all narcissists in some way, but like I swear, Willow to me and Chris, you make cute babies. Like not all babies are created equally in their level of cuteness.
All the credit's mine. All my genes.
Right. You have some cute kids. Now, in saying that, I think Willow, in my opinion, is the cutest baby in the whole world, right? And that's probably because I see me in her, so I'm like kind of a narcissist. But I don't know. I don't
think it's narcissism. I think it's like it's empathy. Like it's and this is why like we have to notice this and combat this, like because it probably is just the default that we like gravitate towards people who look like us and act like us, vote like us, all that stuff. And so like that's why diversity, like not just optically, but like in your life, economically, gender, like politically, like having diversity is so important because it's what keeps you from like falling into that tendency and then atrophying within your own perspective. And I think the spiritual, like this is where the language of the incarnation is so important, like because I do think that God incarnates, like comes to us in our context, in our language, like so God looks like us, God meets us in our situation. And so yeah, I think it's natural. I think we got to combat it, but also acknowledge it. Like there aren't bad factors. Like I just thought Thor Ragnarok was the funniest one, and I have
a little. It was the funniest one, dude.
Right.
It was the funniest one, hands down. And if your go-to for movies is comedy, then yeah, of course, Thor. Right? Like again, I talked about hand-to-hand combat in Captain America 2 because I like that. But exactly, that's doing for you, right? So no, I get that.
Yeah,
that's good. I think there is something to be said about representation as far as like to the survival element that you're referring to. There's this idea that I see something that resembles me, therefore there's this level of safety, so my threat levels come down, my anxieties come down. Like that's a survival like design. I get that, it's completely natural. On the flip side, damn, lost my train of thought.
It's also, I'll add to that, it's also like comfort of the familiar and fear of the unknown. Like I think that's part of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you just don't know, and so
right.
I think we have that, survival, like it's more safe because I know this.
Right. Bringing it back, and I remembered bringing it back to Chadwick. Chadwick's story was a representation that combated a false narrative around the black man. One of Chadwick's earlier roles that he did was of some thug holding somebody at gunpoint, and the executives were like, "Oh, you did such a good job." And he's like, "What's the backstory of this character?" And he started asking these probing questions, which made the executives feel uncomfortable. And they said, "We're going to go a different direction." They actually didn't choose him because he wanted to get at why is this character doing this just because he's a black guy or whatever the case is. So him being a positive role model. And then there was this beautiful story about how he was struggling through college, couldn't pay his tuition, gets this letter in the mail. The letter in the mail pays for his summer tuition, and it's from Denzel Washington, which was a role model of his because he was an aspiring actor. And then you fast forward into Black Panther, the premiere. Chadwick bought a theater in his hometown so that the kids that were unfortunate enough to like not be able to see it would have a medium in which they could watch this movie. So there's this premiere, and then Denzel's there, and then he meets Denzel, and he like thanks him for this tuition, and then Denzel's like, "Oh, so that's why I'm here. You owe me money." And it's just like this cute like relationship building around these black men that for so many years we didn't hear or see anything like that. So I think that's that idea of representation, like it's a survival humanistic trait, but then how does representation work in our world today, in the West, in America, in 2020? You know what I'm saying? It's so many layers to it. So many layers, and we're at 25 minutes. So
we solved it. You're welcome, everybody.
Oh man, yeah, it's what can I say? Roots and branches. It's what we do, man. It's what we do.
Well, thank you, Chadwick, for your life and your gift of your art to our world.
Amen.
Cheers.
Amen to that.
My
Cheers. Cheers. And this is also brought to you in part by Lyrical Opposition Hydro Flask Water. Cheers to you, Chris. And that's it, man. Any closing words to the people? No closing words to the people. All right. So just because, go ahead.
I was trying to think of a line from Black Panther that wouldn't be disingenuous for me to quote, but you go. I'm just gonna stop talking. Go,
bro. So this is gonna be distasteful. No, I'm not gonna say it. It might be distasteful, so I don't want to say it. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I want to play our outro video, but I'm having trouble pulling it up. So I'm just gonna close this thing. Yo, Oak Life, love y'all. Chris and Greg and Chris. Craig out this thing. Peace. That's our outro music because I can't do the video.
I have a guitar. It's over there. Never mind.